Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Read Becca. It's time once again for my weekly chatty catch up on everything I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading more about the current week, as well as some general lifey chit chat. So I finish up two things this week once again. The Practice of the Horizon and The Chain by Sofia Samatar is the first thing I finished. I was almost done with this already last week, but this really packed a punch. It's a kind of far future sci-fi, it seems. It's a novella, obviously, and this is up for some of the major sci-fi and fantasy awards this year. So I knew of it because a couple people had read it and really raved about it, and then the award noms came up, and I was like, I must pick that up. I am so thrilled that I picked this up. It's not going to be for everyone, definitely, because it is more of a thought experiment. It doesn't have a ton of plot, and the characterization is a very effective but kind of spare, I would say. This reminds me a lot of Ursula K. Le Guin. And I would say it's almost kind of a more expanded or inspired, perhaps, story to The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Because we really start with a boy who is only known as the boy throughout this story. And he lives his life in a hold, or a place known as the Hold. And there's not much to his life. It's basically imprisonment. And he is an outlier, though, for this place. He is in proximity to someone that in the Hold is known as the Prophet, and kind of has these lofty ideals and teaches the practice of the title that is this sort of form of belief. And the boy draws so much hope from that and so much meaning in his life from that practice, from the things he's learning through the Prophet, and has such reverence for the Prophet. But also, like, there just isn't anything to their lives. They're in bondage continuously, and that is integrated significantly into this form of belief, to the point that they have metal chains on their ankles, and they have to be removed and replaced as he grows, obviously. And so he can see the kind of line and the skin that has not been exposed underneath when they're changing out these chains. And the Prophet teaches that that is the seat of the soul. So he clearly built this framework and this ideology for their lives to create hope in a hopeless space, to give them something to look toward, to make sense of what they're going through, even though it doesn't make sense, is really what this is about. So this boy is also an outlier in that he's artistic, he's talented, and most people in the Hold seem to not ever achieve or seek to achieve anything above their station. And here he kind of is, and a group of people from above the Hold take notice of him, and he's raised to the second level, where they have kind of these anklets that are still somewhat controlled, but he gains some freedom. And initially, he does not know how to exist outside of this bondage existence that he's had. And he wants to get his chain back because he feels like he's losing his soul as a result of this. Because of the whole framework that has been built for him, his entire world has been from the perspective of a very limited and controlled experience. So we learn that we're actually on a generation ship. We kind of got, it's in the synopsis, so you know very, very clearly that this is a future world. We're on a generation ship run by a mining company. But there is a whole, because it's very long-term, there's a whole society there, and it's extremely hierarchical. So we have the Hold is the lowest caste, who kind of have no life and just live in bondage. We have that sort of second level where people are going about their day pretty normally and contributing to society, working jobs. They have a lot of freedom, but they're still controlled to not step out of line. And then we have the top level, who are people living in decadence and full freedom. And very interestingly, we get a woman who we also don't know by name, and that's interesting because we do know some characters by name, but they're only the people at the top of the hierarchy. So people that are in the lower two castes of hierarchy, we don't ever get names for, really. So I think that's an interesting choice on its own. There's a lot of great choices in the writing. Things like advocating from a position of privilege really comes into play. This woman professor is extremely invested in pulling people up from the Hold, who can better themselves. And as I mentioned with the boy, he just wants to go back to the life he knows very, very often through this. He doesn't really recognize what he's being offered. And that was so hard to read at times because it's sort of learned helplessness to some degree, or it's aligned with that, where he has come to only know this bondage situation, and when offered more freedom, it's too much at times. But he also is kind of a special character, as I said. And so I'm not going to get into how this plays out in the end, I don't think, because it does get into much more plot, much more conflict, but it's not highly action-packed or anything. I feel, for me, I'm not sure I could quite get behind what the author was doing in the end. I still loved the book. It's fantastic, I think. And there is one interpretation, I think, of the way this wraps up, that you could maybe say that the author is pushing the strengths of human connection. And that I could get behind, but I think that's just me trying to find something I can favor and support. Much more, it feels like the author is pushing this idea of the power of belief and faith, and having this belief framework to give hope and identity in a dire situation. But they shouldn't be in that dire situation. Like, I can't set my rational brain aside in going, well, this is all complete BS and they just shouldn't be in the dire situation, to need this fanciful hope to rally around, to keep them going. That's the thing we should be talking about. And we are in this book, but to conclude it the way it does, I'm left unsure. But I did absolutely love this. I loved the thought experiment of it. I loved the writing. It was very spare and yet poetic, which is a great combination, and again brings me back to Le Guin's work, certainly. So I think I have rambled on this one way too much. It is short, it is weighty, and very interesting and thought-provoking. So this is one I definitely really enjoyed, and I'm super happy. I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, I have 2 of her other books on my shelves, so I need to get to those, definitely. The other one is Having and Being Had by Eula Biss. This is an essay collection, nonfiction. And man, did I enjoy this one as well. So 2 great reads. I think in the end of this one, as it also kind of didn't lost me a little bit, but I loved this collection overall. So the collection is caught up in the ideas of late-stage capitalism, consumerism, work, labor, and toil, the ideas of profit, and the meaningfulness of income, of what we're doing in service of others versus to benefit ourselves. And I feel like this was really just enjoyable to read and a great introduction, I think, to those topics. I don't know that this is going to be groundbreaking for someone who's already really familiar with late-stage capitalism and those concepts, or anti-capitalism, but it feels like very casual conversation with a friend, or some musings on the topic, more so than anything academic. And yet it is also bringing pretty academic stuff into the contents of the essays. In a 2-page essay, you're having names dropped of important figures in philosophy and economics and literature, and yet it just does feel very natural and casual. Like, as I said, you're having a friendly conversation with the author as she goes about her day. And she's talking about really relatable things. I think throughout this, there isn't like a larger point, but there are moments of punctuation, is how I would put it probably. So one of the moments, she's talking to a financial advisor about investing for the first time, basically, and trying to figure out what she wants to do with her investments in retirement, perhaps, because she hasn't really done that before. And she has this conversation. The advisor is assuring me now that even if the market dips, even if it crashes, it will come back up again. Given time, he says, it always comes back. I ask him if he can imagine this system of investment coming to an end. No, he says, your money is safe. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if there's any way out of this. Man, does that hit hard, especially right now. So I love that way of thinking. It put me on a path of certainly introspection and rethinking about the systems that surround us. I'm already pretty strongly in the same camp as her way of thinking. I know there are a lot of critiques about this from the perspective of people viewing her as a very privileged person. And she is. She's not wealthy in terms of the US, but overall she's well off. She lives comfortably. She has a family and a home. But she clearly, based on what she discusses here, she has worked and put effort to get to where she is. And things have not just come easy to her continuously. But she certainly is a privileged person. And there is some of that here. And I think that's the aspect that shows up toward the end in the last little bit of essays that is kind of a slightly turn off at points. But I still think there's so much validity in the musings here that really hit home with me. So I did enjoy reading it very, very, very much. And like I said, I think this is a great introductory work to thoughts on this topic. But for me, most people, it seems like, and this is of course my bubble, it feels like just about everyone under a certain age, like probably under 40 or 45, already thinks along these lines, already is in a mindset predominantly about this, or is aware at least of late stage capitalism as an idea. And so I think this is something that people would find relatable and accessible, but may not be totally new ideas. So another very, very good one. And that's what I read this week. And then I also am working on Invisible Monsters. I had wanted to read this before the end of last month. It's only 6 hours on audio and I just kept not getting to it. So I'm almost done with it now. And that's a reread as well. So that's the book stuff. And I've rambled on way, way too much. So let's go very, very quickly if we can. Watching stuff. I finished What We Do in the Shadows, which is a long-running, very silly vampire fake docuseries, satirical docuseries, mockumentary series. And I've just enjoyed this show so much. It was a little heartbreaking to reach the finale of it and be done finally. I mean, I think it's been out for months that this is already finished, so I'm behind the times, but it was a delight. I really enjoyed the series overall. I think the last 2 seasons were a little uneven in terms of quality, but so much in the larger plot lines really played out in the last 2 series, and character progression, I would say. But there is a whole element in the wrapping up of the series of like them questioning, or Guillermo specifically, who's kind of their human minion, the vampire's human minion, questioning like, have we grown and changed over this whole time that he's been there? You know, that's a major element of the looking back at the end of the series. And I enjoyed that. So it's bittersweet that it's over because it's very funny, but I'm hopeful that the creators will move on to other similar or equally funny projects because we definitely need more of that vibe in the world. So that is what I finished watching this week, I think. And then my life, rapid fire. Today is actually the weekend of the book fair here. So I have already been and gone and gotten too many books. So I will have my first book haul of the year coming up. My yard, oh man. So I feel like I have to check in on all these minor dumb things that I have brought up in the past, but I mentioned previously there was all this work going on in my yard and it was just a mess. It has only gotten worse. It's been raining continuously. It's raining outside right now. They have every light on, trying to get any light to film today. But they continued working despite it being rainy and just completely like, we're spinning the treads on the big work vehicles. I'm like, they had, I think a cat and a tractor, and just like spinning the treads and having foot deep ruts in the dirt, in the mud. And so my whole yard is just terrible. They did kind of go back and try to clean it up and lay down grass seed to grow and everything, but it is a mess. So I'm not very happy about that, but like it was the Department of Transportation doing it, so there's not much you can do. Yeah, so my yard is gone basically. It's just a big mud wallow. And then Earl, the kitty, is doing okay. So he's here because of digestive issues, and unfortunately they were doing great initially and then like completely has fallen off and is not doing well again. Behaviorally he's great, he's fantastic, but his tummy troubles are not letting up, unfortunately. So continuing to try things with that. I think that's all we will check in on. I'm sure I'm forgetting something that happened this week, but we don't have time. I'm not going to prolong this. So let's talk about recommendations then. My recommendations from BookTube this week that I watched, I have several once again. Number one, Dr. Cranky Pants Reads did a wonderful video on kids' books before the 19th century and how wild and crazy they were. Kitty and the Books is doing a series of videos to help people diversify and get out of the echo chamber of epic fantasy. And so she did a video on fantasy books written by Asian authors. Fantastic selections in there. Then we had two books that are on fascism. Not two books, two videos that were on fascism. And they both are more than just discussing the books, I think. So the first was Salem's Shelf, did a reading vlog interrogating two books about fascism and topics to do with that, but approached it kind of as a study, like a self-study situation, taking notes and writing down questions that came up during reading the books, and really actually did analytical work to answer those questions and think through the things that were coming up while reading. And then the second fascism-related topic was a single book discussion on the book How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley, and that video was done by Dave and Olive from Book Blather. But it goes beyond discussing just the book. So Dave talks through some of his personal perspective on specifically the US and where we're at, as well as talking through some of the steps in progression of fascism and thoughts on the book itself. So I really enjoyed the two kind of tackling this from a more analytical perspective and trying to get across some of the information instead of just talking about their thoughts on the book. Really, really enjoyed both of those. So I think that is where I will leave the recommendations for this week, and you can find all of those linked down below in the description box. A bit of a lengthy ramble today, but that's what we're here for. So with that, I will say I hope you have a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.